The webinar will begin shortly. Please remain on the line. The webinar will begin shortly. Please remain on the line. The webinar will begin shortly. Please remain on the line. The webinar will begin shortly. Please remain on the line. The webinar will begin shortly. Please remain on the line. The webinar will begin shortly. Please remain on the line. The webinar will begin shortly. Please remain on the line. The webinar will begin shortly. Please remain on the line. The webinar will begin shortly. Please remain on the line. The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome you to the March 22nd, 2021 Westminster City Council meeting. At this point, I would ask all of you who are able to please join us in our Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I thank you. Ms. Parker, would you take the roll, please?
Mayor Atchison.
Here.
Councilor Demott.
Present.
Mayor Pro Tem Sites.
Here.
Councilor Seymour.
Here.
Councilor Scully.
Here.
Councilor Smith.
Present.
And Councilor Bowles.
Here.
Thank you, Council. Ladies and gentlemen, before we start the council meeting tonight, I'm going to ask you to take a moment. As many of you are aware, we've had a breaking incident in the city of Boulder today that has been going on since approximately around 2:30 today. We have a lot of information floating around the internet. The police department in Boulder has asked you to please stay away from that information because most of it is turning out not to be true. We hope to have an actual update for you on this meeting later on tonight before we adjourn. So we will hold any kind of update on what's going there. But at this time, we believe there are lives lost. We're not sure how many. We don't know how much tragedy actually has occurred up there, but I would ask you please to pause with us for a moment to recognize those who have been affected, the families, those we know about, those we don't, and all the first responders who've had to go to the scene today, as there have been a huge number, including Westminster. So I would ask you at this point, please hold a moment of silence for those affected. All right, thank you, everyone. At this time, our first piece of business will be item 3A. This is a consideration of the minutes of the preceding meeting of March the 8th. Can I have a motion for that item, please? Councilor Bowles, if you would.
Mr. Mayor, I move to approve the minutes of the March 8th, 2021 meeting as presented.
Councilor Smith.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor by voice vote, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion is then carried. The next item on the agenda for now is a presentation. This is a presentation and acknowledgement of the 1-year anniversary of COVID-19. Give me a second to get this back up. Whereas on March the 12th, 2020, the first COVID-19 case was confirmed in Westminster, Colorado. And whereas in response, the city of Westminster issued an emergency declaration and activated the Emergency Operations Center that same day. Whereas countless lives have been saved, but sadly more than 444,000 have tested positive with COVID-19 with some lingering after effects, and more than 6,100 have died of COVID-19 in the state of Colorado. And whereas since the start of the COVID-19 pandemic, Westminster has experienced more than 8,300 COVID-19 cases and 109 deaths. And whereas our frontline healthcare and essential workers have faced incredible challenges as we battle the pandemic and continue providing the services our residents need. And whereas the COVID-19 pandemic has taken a physical, mental, and emotional toll on our frontline and essential workers and residents. And whereas our city, state, and nation are grieving the hundreds of thousands of lives lost, as well as personal, financial, economic, and other impacts of the pandemic. And whereas our community and local business owners have demonstrated responsibility, ingenuity, and resilience in adapting to public health orders, slowing the spread of COVID-19, and receiving vaccinations. Whereas the city of Westminster has invested millions of dollars to support the community through direct business assistance, housing assistance, access to food, and social recovery programs. We're at this 1 year mark. It is important to remember and mourn those we have lost to this deadly virus, those who have become sick, and all of their families. Whereas we will continue working together as a community until we can bring an end to the COVID-19 pandemic. Now, therefore, I hurry back to the mayor of the city of Westminster on behalf of the entire city council and staff to hereby proclaim that March 22nd through 28th, 2021 is declared a week of reflection for the lives lost and severely impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic over the past year. We call upon the people of Westminster to join city council and staff to reflect upon the hard work, dedication, and sacrifices of our frontline healthcare workers and essential workers that have selflessly served our community during this time, and remember those lost or severely impacted during this pandemic. Signed this 22nd day of March, 2021. Ms. Parker, we have a number of people here who have signed up for a public comment. I'll turn it over to you for now.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We do have one person who has requested to speak live. I don't see that individual has joined our meeting at this time, but we also have 3 voicemails that were received by the deadline, as well as 3 emails that were submitted. And those were forwarded to council and added to the packet as well. So at this time, we will begin with the voicemails. I'd like to just make a quick comment that one of these voicemails was apparently truncated at the 4-minute 27-second mark. So Jody, if you could begin with the voicemails. And Mr. Mayor, I will advise you if by the time we finish with those voicemails, if our live speaker has joined us.
Mr. Mayor, City Council and staff, this is Chris Stimson, living in the Cotton Creek area. Last week, City Council received a briefing from staff on the proposed changes in water rates for 2022 in Westminster, which, if accepted by Council, will mean a water rate increase of less than 4% and a sewer rate increase of less than 6%. My average monthly water and sewer bill from March 2020 till February 2021 was $54.58 for an annual usage of 39,000 gallons. I think I can handle the increase. Reading the city website, however, I see that 1/4 of our residents used 36,000 gallons or less, so I exceeded that amount by just 3,000 gallons. Tighter control is indicated. However, it seems that fully 1/2 of our residents used 80,000 gallons, more than twice my usage, and the other 1/4 used 150,000 gallons, nearly 4 times. If I used 150,000 gallons on my yard, it would dissolve into mud and flow down the road into Big Dry Creek. I also see why there is a proposed increase in the rates. We need more than $80 million for water and sewer capital improvements, mainly for a new and much-needed water treatment facility. Staff presented these figures, along with a proposal to save some $700 million over the next 20 years, which sounds like good math to me. Folks, there is an underlying philosophy here. There are no free lunches. We need clean water for ourselves and for the towns we sell it to. Council members who vote to accept the staff figures are, I think, being realistic in not wanting brown water to come out of their faucets or to have their toilets backing up. But there is a more important long-term issue at play here. Geographical studies have shown what, for any given region of this country, will be the greatest threat and result of climate change. Coastal and riverside areas will see increased sea rise and flooding. Mountain areas will see less snowpack. Forested areas will see more wildfires. For us in what I term lowland Colorado and for much of the Midwest, the greatest impact of climate change will be water stress. That is to say, the diminution of our water resources below what we require for agriculture and safe drinking water. And this is not some distant future speculation. Data shows it is extant. Perhaps the time will come when the state of Colorado or the city of Westminster outlaws water use for non-essential purposes. This could happen quite soon, but perhaps we can postpone the event by remembering that we live in what is environmentally an arid prairie and treating our private property appropriately and above all, investing responsibly in water management. Thank you.
My name is William McCann, and I will be addressing climate change and public policy. Climate change is understood by many to mean something principally man-made. The reality is that climate change is basically a natural phenomenon. As presented to the public, the concept ignores known climate of the recent millennia and relies heavily on projections based on climate models. Models are a virtual reality of how nature operates. They are necessarily biased and are never perfect, and they all need to be tested against reality, fact-checked if you like. Science is never settled. It's never done by consensus, and the debate is never over. The scientific method is development of a hypothesis, testing through experimentation, and analysis of results. A climate model is just a scientific experiment whose results are not reality. On the other hand, public policy is made by consensus and rapidly develops concrete results. The two processes should never be confused. Many aspects of public policy are now driven by the virtual reality of climate change models, exacerbated by groupthink and a certain authoritarianism, both in science and in the arena of public policy. And fact-checking has withered on the vine. History is full of conflict between a ruling class with an erroneous point of view and those with an out-of-the-ordinary point of view. For example, Galileo, Copernicus, Columbus, Magellan, or Einstein. Groupthink is dangerous when mixing science and public policy, especially when public policy makers think that science is settled or the debate is over. One objective of the Westminster Sustainability Plan is to establish a resilient, equitable, and reliable energy future powered by low carbon and renewable energy. It's an objective loaded with assumptions. Unfortunately, it assumes that the virtual reality provided by climate models is sufficiently accurate to be used as a basis for the development of public policy. Caution is advised not to wade too deeply into that swamp. Presently, the rate of rise of global temperatures predicted by climate models is double that which is observed. This means that model-based projections of future catastrophes, such as rising sea levels, increased wildfires, droughts, and stronger hurricanes, are based on something that is not happening. An example is the prediction 2 weeks ago by Lyndon Henderson of the Sunrise Movement. He commented to you and addressed climate change and said how we have to avert catastrophe. Quote, climate crisis is coming and will be here in 9 years, unquote. Wow, it's a pretty remarkable prediction. It's so precise. And that actually originally came from the UN. This prediction is just like many others. 1989, Dr. James Hansen, in 20 years, the West Side Highway of Manhattan will be underwater. Well, it's still there and bone dry. 1995, experts say that because of the rise of the seas, the beaches on the East Coast will be gone in 25 years. The beaches are still there, and it's 2021. The year 2000, Dr. David Vinner of the University of East Anglia says children aren't going to know what snow is. That's obviously wrong. The year 2003, UN officials say global warming threatens the ski industry as there is less cold Arctic air to get down to the mid-latitudes. That's wrong. 2009, Al Gore predicted the North Pole to be ice-free by the year 2013. It's 2021, and it's still not ice-free. It's also been said that the polar bears are going extinct, yet their population is 4 times what it was decades ago. I could go on, one wrong prediction after another. If your estimation of the importance of this global issue is based off a model, a virtual reality, not scientific data, which is reality, we will end up having bad public policy. And who is going to determine inappropriate cost to the city and its residents if the policy is wrong? Probably no one. Thank you for your time.
Hello, councilors. My name is Charles Najar, 5940 West 94th Place. I want to say that I was extremely entertained by the study session the other night, with the presenter claiming that 401 residents out of a city of more than 115,000, which, if you do your math, equals to less than 0.3%, responded to some bogus survey claiming that the Westminster police are as close to perfect as you can get. There are no problems with them. And it was just absolutely entertaining. And of course, surprisingly, I never received in this survey. None of my neighbors ever received this survey in Tuscany Trails. So I want to know what the methodology was behind sending this out to residents. I think that everybody realizes that this was a bogus survey. The presenter could not even get her PowerPoint presentation straight. It was very, very painful to watch, very poorly presented. And the results simply were just garbage. And I think a good litmus test for this community is to see where Councilor Smith, Seymour, and DeMott stand on virtually any issue. Their bogus assertions that Westminster has a great reputation in the law enforcement community around the metro area is easily disproven by talking to, I've talked to people from Thornton, from Lakewood, from Wheat Ridge. I'm sorry to say that the Westminster police have a reputation as lawless cowboys, which dovetails perfectly with their reticence to get body cameras. And I want to speak to President Pro Tem Seitz. Anita, you had the unmitigated gall to suggest that Tim Carlson displays leadership. I'm sorry, an officer under his command brutally raped a woman in uniform on duty almost 4 years ago, and this department still does not have body cameras. Roger Stockman, another former Westminster officer, pistol whipped a gentleman in the face while he was handcuffed. Taxpayers of this city had to pay over $200,000 in a civil settlement, and I don't hear any council members complain about that. They'll complain about the water bill. So I want to ask you, Anita, does that display leadership? Does that display leadership, the fact that Tim Carlson only wants to get out and engage the public after the George Floyd incident, after the fact that he's been proven as a complete feckless and useless leader? I want to speak to you, City Manager Don Tripp, who told us last summer on YouTube that we should, and I'm going to use your words, wrap our arms around our poor Westminster police officers and show them their support. Well, let me ask you, Don Tripp, have you, and you have suggested many times that city staff listens to all these. Tim Carlson said that they reach out to the strongest and most vocal critics of Westminster police. Well, I'm here to tell you that I'm one of them. I complain. I have sent numerous emails to all counselors, to the mayor, to all city staff, to police department command staff. And you know how many emails I've had returned? 0. So it's obvious that, Tripp, you just want to continue and spread this false narrative that the Westminster, police department is as damn close to perfect as you can get. It's disgusting. It's ridiculous. And to anybody else listening in this community, you're not alone. Just join me, speak up, use your voice against these people, because we know these 7 clowns on this dais do not have the city's best interest. I mean, how many people listening to this right now know that Herb Ashinson's son is a police officer? How many people know that? But he's supposed to be viewed as a neutral party with his whole epistle the other week about how it's an attack on our SROs. Well, let me tell you something, Herb. No.
All right, Mr. Mayor, we have not yet been joined by the live speaker at this time. And so if we are joined by that speaker, I will advise you.
All right, Ms. Parker. I also understand the last gentleman's recording was cut off short, as you indicated, and you have already indicated you've tried to reach him to finish that and will have been unable.
We did, Mr. Mayor, staff reached out to the caller and offered him an extended deadline to be able to re-record his message until 6:30 p.m. this evening. But unfortunately, we did not receive any other message.
Okay, thank you very much. Mr. Tripp, I'm going to skip to council comments to give you a little extra time in the event that you can get some kind of a appropriate update for us. So I'm going to move on to council and see if there are any comments from council at this time. Councilor Scully.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Last week, I had the privilege of attending the Jefferson County Economic Development Council. This is a monthly meeting that we do, and they talked about 3 really important topics. One was the Career and Impact Bond, which is where people are hired and trained, and they receive assistance for their education, and then through their hiring, the company pays for their education, and then they pay it back slowly as they keep going. So it's a really interesting concept. And then they also talked about the foreign trade zone and how they had been successful in talking to the Denver port and working an agreement out with the Rocky Mountain Metropolitan Airport. And then they also talked about the entrepreneurial ship ecosystems and how we are working to convene businesses and people in the community who have small businesses and large businesses, and people who need employees, and how they can all work together. So it was a really good meeting, lots of information, and it's always kind of hard to take a lot of notes because they're moving pretty fast, but they're doing a really good job. They're very active and working really hard. Then I also went to the Metropolitan Denver Regional Convening on Homelessness. I cannot say enough about this presentation. It was outstanding. This was a group that talked about how do we reduce and eliminate homelessness in our communities. They have very concrete and solid ideas. They talked about how 14 communities around the United States have actually eradicated homelessness within their communities, and 79 communities are currently able to track and name all of the homeless people in their cities, which gives them a better advantage of being able to help those people who suffer or experience chronic homelessness. Really great ideas. It was all about really prevention and helping those who are currently impacted, really working with veterans, and then moving out from that area, from those people to bigger groups. It was just enlightening, and it was fabulous. I really enjoyed it. Homelessness obviously is a real passion of mine. I have relatives who have experienced homelessness. I currently have a relative who experiences it chronically, and it's just scary and it's hard, and you feel just like there's just nothing you can do. So this is one of my passions working on the city council, is that I get to work on this issue. Jefferson County has been just integral in working on this issue lately. And then also, I'm working on a diaper drive. I'm collecting diapers for Senate District 19. We're in a competition with Senate District 23 to try and collect as many diapers as we can to help people who have experienced economic hardship during COVID. Sometimes those who are most impacted are young moms with young children, and they're struggling. They don't have access to diapers or any of the products needed, wipes and ointments to put on the baby's bottoms. And as a mom, I know how awful that must feel when you can't give to your child a basic need. And some of these moms are just having to resort to horrible ways to solve this problem. So currently I am participating in this drive. I'm collecting diapers and ointment and wipes at my home. I will come pick them up. So if you contact me through my city account, let me know you're interested in participating with me. I will send you a personal message, and I will either arrange to come to your home and pick up the materials, or I will have you, several people have actually Amazon them straight to my home. I will be delivering them on the last day of March to our contact here in the north area, who then will take them to the main area for the entire Jefferson County area, and they will count them up and see how we do. So I'd love to have people participate with me. And then finally, I want to say my prayers and thoughts are with the people of Boulder. This is a tragic event. Prayers are just never enough. I wish there were more we could do. So all I can do for tonight is send my prayers to those in Boulder, family, friends, and community. Please let us know you're safe. If you haven't already checked in with your loved ones or your friends, because we're all very concerned. And my heart goes out to their community. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm going to start with just giving a quick update on the meetings I attended last week. On Wednesday, I attended with the mayor, the Denver Regional Council of Government. The mayor had to drop off at a certain point in the call, so I'm going to give a more full update than I typically would. We did get a kind of preview from Dr. Jamie Reif on the Metro Regional Convening of Homelessness. We also, looking at the agenda, voted on some grants for the Safer Street programs. Westminster did not apply in that round. There was a little bit of money left over from the communities that did apply that will be folded into the state's $30 million additional dollars being given for this program this year. That is also going to be combined with the Main Streets program. So just wanted to make sure staff was aware in case there were any opportunities for us to make a safer street improvement, sidewalks, pedestrian crossings, bike lanes, all of those sort of things count towards that grant process. As I mentioned, Dr. Jamie Reif did give us a preview of that Metro Regional Convening on Homelessness. Similar to Councilor Scully, I did attend the convening, and it was incredibly impressive. They're following the framework of Plan for Zero. Their initial target population is going to be veterans. Because this is basically, they can use an approach, it's a smaller population, and then the techniques are scalable to additional populations. So it's not prioritizing or putting more value on a certain population, but strategically, it does allow them to have success. This has been in multiple communities and has been proven effective. Some communities eliminating homelessness in that population completely. One of the things they asked us to do at the end of the convening was to get our communities to take a pledge. I am hoping that staff was in attendance and that they could send that pledge to my colleagues on council to see if we have interest as a body in signing that pledge and entering into this regional process. That was the real focus on this. Is homelessness is not an issue that can be solved in one community, but a metro regional process and approach similar to Dr. Cog within subregions, similar to Dr. Cog, is the approach that they are taking. And they're actually asking Dr. Cog for some guidance on the structural portion of it. I guess it was Friday then, I had my NADA strategic planning meeting where we were just really putting the agenda together for this week's meeting. Again, I did speak to Hickenlooper's office. I will be emailing tonight before I forget quite a few opportunities for the city of Westminster, but it sounds like they would like a tour of our downtown, are excited to learn more about the big issues that are facing us. Congressional earmarks are back. They're called community grants now. And there's, we know that our congressional representatives each get 10, but we do not know yet how many the senators will get, obviously more. But that program was brought up to me, and it's something, if there's some big issues going on in Westminster, we probably need to be aware of and build a deep relationship with our delegation. So again, I want to just, how are we interfacing with the federal delegation? Do we feel NLC is enough advocacy for us? Then on Friday, I went to a tribute for Lieutenant Tracy Post. Tracy Post is one of our brave firefighters. And as she was battling her own cancer, she learned that breast cancer was not a covered cancer under the Firefighters Cancer Trust. And so as someone who has dedicated their life to the service of others would, she decided to make that right and petitioned and worked to get it amended so that breast cancer is a covered cancer. So advocating for all women in her profession for now and into the future, and was successful. So it was wonderful. State Representative Shannon Byrd came, read her a proclamation, and also gave her a Colorado state flag. I do have a request from my colleagues. I had sent an email last week asking for a statement from council condemning violence against the Asian American community. And while I did hear back from 2 of my colleagues, I have not in support, and 1 colleague who would rather not, just because they don't want to dilute council statements. I'd really like to see us make a statement. Again, I thought it showed leadership from our police chief to have a press conference with our Asian community and the mayor denouncing this violence. It's really important to call out hate, to call out racism, to call out violence, and call it by its name, and to let people know it's not okay. I think that we should follow our chief's lead on this, and I think that we as a body should do it as well. So I'm hoping that I can get your support with that. There was a caller tonight who mentioned my support of the chief's leadership. And I have to say it's press conferences like that that lead me to feel that chief is a leader. The fact that we learned that we were the very first community to do that police survey, which is now a national survey, leads me to feel this chief is a leader. The fact that some of the cases that he mentioned, our police officers gave evidence, were supportive with the investigation. There was no wall of silence, but rather a desire for accountability. I think that says a lot about leadership. So I won't go on, but I stand by my statement. Finally, as many of you know, I grew up in Boulder. And my heart's hurting tonight. That is the grocery store my mother-in-law shops at. She was there twice yesterday. But the thing is, this is in every town, it feels like now, and it's all too common, and it's all too heartbreaking. And I think it's beyond time that we start having hard conversations about how we stem the wave of violence in this country. I'm looking forward to tonight. Hopefully it'll be an easy agenda. I appreciate everyone who's tuning in.
Councilor Smith.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. This goes back to March 11th. I attended the CC4CA meeting, and that was a meeting to work on the policy statement. Lots of jurisdictions adding their thoughts and changing words, some definition changes, but this policy statement will be in progress and be worked on for the next couple meetings, so for the next couple months. For the North Metro Arts Alliance, that took place last Thursday, the group ratified the 2021 budget and went over the upcoming events such as the Honors Music Festival and the wonderful Wednesday concert series, and those will be happening at Clear Creek Park. The program will be once a month, and the Missoula Children's Theater will be at the end of June, located again at the Clear Creek Park. The North Metro Arts Alliance art exhibit will be on display between March 3rd and April 30th. And it will be located at the R Gallery in historic Westminster. So if anyone has an opportunity to patron or view any of those art pieces, they're wonderful. Please attend, or please visit the R Gallery. And then on behalf of the North Metro Arts Alliance, they were able to deliver art supplies to 2 kindergarten classes in underprivileged schools in Adams County. And those are for the 2020 and 2021 funds that couldn't be allocated. So they were trying to allocate the best way that they knew how, and donated those art supplies to those kindergarten classes. And then lastly, along with all my colleagues, I'm sure, my thoughts and prayers are with all involved and affected in this horrible tragedy. And I can't imagine what we're all going through as a community and as a state. So that's all my updates. Thank you.
Okay, Councilor Bowles.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I want to associate myself with comments made by my colleagues already. My thoughts are also, I have quite a few friends in Boulder, and my thoughts are with them, and I'm still waiting to hear. I've got texts out like everybody else does probably. We must be more kind to one another. We have to do a better job, and we need to treat each other with respect and be more kind. And it starts with us, and I plan to commit to that. I also then just want to thank Mayor Atchison and our police chief, Tim Carlson, for what they did. Coming out and saying what happened, this violence against Asians that we're seeing, 150% increase or more in hate crimes against Asians is unacceptable. And we will not tolerate that here in Westminster. We show support for our residents. So I thank the mayor and I thank our chief for doing that. I support them wholeheartedly. And Mayor Pro Tem had mentioned earlier a statement. I would support that as well. But I do have to say, I have an aunt who is Japanese, my Aunt Hisako. I have 3 cousins who are also half Japanese, and they're scared right now, to be perfectly honest. So they actually live in Virginia and Boston and more on the East Coast. However, I would support that for any people feeling discriminated against in that way. It's hard for me to talk about a little bit, but I would support that. So again, I just believe strongly we must be more kind to one another, more compassionate, and I plan to be that way myself. So thank you. That's all I have.
Councilor DeMott.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you to my colleagues for their words. Thanks to everybody who called in this evening. A couple things I wanted to cover real quickly. 2 are asks of council that I'd like to bring up. Through the water discussions, I had asked about a measurement, getting the measurement of impact of CompUse changes since 13 on. I've gotten 18, 19, and 20. I'm told it's going to take 6 hours in order to get the other years. That's over the 3-hour limit that council is allowed to do without the rest of council, or at least 3 other members agreeing to it. So I would ask that you support me in that. I think that us having that information is vital as we go into our next comprehensive land use plan change, as we continue our water discussions. I imagine that the rest of you would like to see that information as much as I would. Much like Mayor Pro Tem Seitz, I also had a letter that I had asked that council consider. The city of Thornton had put out a strong letter through their mayor with council supporting them to speak against Senate Bill 2162. I know we've taken a position as a city. I think that it was a good show of leadership for the city of Thornton's mayor and council to put that statement out, and I would ask that we do the same. Lastly, on a more really important note, I didn't have a lot of meetings over the last week. I got to spend time with my family. which when you have moments in days like today seems a little bit more relevant. And I think that Councillor Voles has it right when we talk about being kind with each other. Dr. Martin Luther King said we must live together as brothers or perish together as fools. The thing I always like about Dr. King is he talks about hearts, because that's really where our problems are. We can talk about guns and sensible gun laws, but the reality is this nation has a heart problem. And until you fix that and fix the fact that people are willing to do the most horrible things to each other in this country, we're going to continue to have a problem. We need to remember, that we're neighbors, family members, and I think that's, truly how we're going to get past these kind of situations. And lastly, I want to thank all the members of law enforcement. There were multiple agencies who went and helped in Boulder today. And those are folks that when everybody else is trying to get away from the danger, they rush in, knowing they might not go home to their loved ones, knowing what they're walking into. So I, for one, very much value the police department we have. I value the police departments across Colorado and in this nation, because they truly are the ones who show up when we need their help. So with that, those are my comments. Thank you.
Councillor Seymour.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I too want to think about our neighbors in Boulder. That is the store where my son and future daughter-in-law shop. So I was very glad to get a text from them today. So it hits home for all of us. But we have to recognize there is evil in this world. And that's why I want to commend the Boulder Police Department, Boulder Sheriff's Department, and all the local departments that at a moment's notice rushed to Boulder to help their comrades. So that's important. And I do want to make a statement. Mayor Pro Tem did reach out regarding the letter on violence. And I am the one who had concern about us writing another letter. This council has been vehement in our statements, denouncing hate in every form, racism, violence against other people. And I think that's where we stand, and we stand well. And that's why I mentioned, I appreciate that she did reach out to all of us, but that's where I stood as far as I felt it responding in every single case with a council statement dilutes the fact that we do stand with each other. We stand with our residents and our neighbors. And so that was my stand. So I appreciate her letting me out myself. So I do appreciate that. But that's all the comments I have for this evening. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Council. As some of you had mentioned, Chief Carlson and City Manager contacted me last week in regards to the incident in Atlanta. And we did hold a press conference on Thursday afternoon, which was taped, is out on the video. But I want people to understand this was not only recognizing the impact to the Asian community. As I said in my statements, these kind of atrocities are happening to our African-American communities, our Latinos, our LGBT communities, and others. And this kind of attitude toward somebody just because you think that an illness came from another country has nothing to do with these people who are living here. They didn't bring it. They're not the ones spreading it. We're all spreading it. So those kind of reactions and the events that took place in Atlanta, I agree with all of my council comments that these kind of actions have got to stop. Unfortunately, we've got to find a way to get people to stop perpetrating them. I want to make one correction to the last speaker. I think my wife and I are both pretty well aware of the sex of our children, and I don't have any sons. So I don't know where they're getting their information, but this is the kind of stuff that's out there. I have 2 daughters, and neither one of them is a cop. So, Mr. Tripp, would you like to add anything to this comments tonight?
Mr. Mayor, I was queued up tonight to at the 1-year anniversary of
COVID taking us out of City Hall and changing our world, I wanted to point out some of the things that had happened in the last year. I'd like to defer that until next week. It doesn't seem like anything that we want to be presenting tonight necessarily. What I would like to do is ask Chief Tim Carlson to join me. And in fact, I'll defer to him. Mayor, you asked for an update in terms of what the activities in Boulder, and Tim Carlson, our Chief of Police, will provide an update on what he can tell you about what's happening in Boulder today, and also maybe a bit about his department and their support of that effort.
Thank you, Mr. Tripp. Good evening, Mayor Pro Tem, and Council. I'm Tim Carlson, the Chief of Police in Westminster. It certainly is a sad, horrible, and tragic day, not only for Boulder, but for all our communities. I just listened to the press conference that Boulder PD put on. They did actually confirm that one of their officers was killed this afternoon during this incident. They provided very little additional detail. As you can imagine, this is an investigation that's incredibly complex, and they had no further information to give out as far as other folks who were injured or killed during the event. They did state that they had one person in custody. They reiterated that there is no ongoing public threat. The Westminster Police Department was notified, as many others were, shortly after this incident happened. We ended up sending 12 officers to Boulder, 2 sergeants, 2 commanders, as well as a couple of our public information officers to assist Boulder PD. So that's a brief update. I don't want to go any further than what Boulder has already announced, and they did say that they'll provide periodic press updates when they have more information. So that's all I have for this evening. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Chief, and appreciate the response from Westminster as well. Mr. Tripp, you have anything else? Don, we were not able to hear you.
No, sir, I don't.
All right, thank you. Moving on to the next item, it's item 8A. This is normally for the consent agenda, but since we've had a question that wants to be asked about this item, we will take a motion to approve the consent agenda item, the first and second, then I'll open it up for comments. And I'm trying to think what I got. Councilor Seymour, if you would.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I move that we approve the item 8A on the consent agenda.
Okay. Councilor Scully. Hang on a minute. Hold on. I got the thing rolling on me. Councilor DeMott, sorry.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. I will open it up now for questions, and I mean, Councilor Bowles, you said you had some questions.
I did, and I'll be very brief. I just had a few quick questions, and it's really for me more of a learning process a little bit as a council member about, and I don't know if everyone knows or not, but we do get a regular monthly financial report, and included in that report, there's a series of reports. And one of the reports is our shopping center report. And I just have a couple quick questions, and I kind of sent this in earlier just because I wanted to learn more about what causes. So when you look through the report, we have a couple where they're in the thousands of % change. And I know that the dollar amount isn't a lot, but when you see a 3,500% change, I just wonder what, I guess I want to learn more about it. For instance, City Center Marketplace at the northeast corner of 92nd Sheridan. It lists the use tax. So we get the sales tax and the use tax, and it comes in at 3,500% change. What causes a change like that exactly? I'm not that aware, and I just wanted to become more aware of that. So can someone help me with that? And it looked to me like, and correct me if I'm wrong, it looked to me like it was in the benefit of the city. So it went towards the benefit or a positive towards the city. So I'm not questioning anything like, I want to learn a little more about why we would see that in a report that we look at regularly.
Thank you, Councilor Bowles, and good evening, Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, and council members. My name is Larry Dorr, Chief Financial Officer and Deputy City Manager. Councilor Bowles, I know that our Finance Director, Tammy Hitchens, who's just joined us, received your question earlier today, so I'll just invite her to respond. Thank you, Ms. Hitchens.
Hey, thank you, Deputy Dorr and Councilor Bowles. And thanks for the question earlier today. It's always helpful to get those in advance so we can be prepared for the question. In that particular case, the reason that you're seeing a large increase is that there was a tenant in that shopping center that was audited. And as a result of that audit, they owed some use tax, and obviously it was a little bit more significant than perhaps an annual return, and so that's a big bump that you're seeing in that shopping center as a result of an audit.
Okay, and who performs the audit?
So the sales tax staff does that. So we have a sales tax manager, a sales tax supervisor, and then like 4 auditors.
Thank you for that answer. That's excellent. Well, good work. I'd like to hear that. And then what are some other reasons we would see? There are a few of them that were there, like instead of the normal 8% change, the 22% change, they're like 1,000 or 1,300. What are other things that might cause those to bump up like that? What kind of things am I looking at when I see that?
There could be an occasion where a company buys a large piece of equipment or something and they don't pay sales tax on it, but they're ultimately going to be utilizing that piece of equipment in their business. Maybe it's a new stove for a restaurant or something like that. Then they would actually pay use tax on that. Another item might be if someone did some small remodeling that didn't require a building permit, but as a result, they paid use tax on that. So those are the types of things that you might see in there.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Hitchens. I appreciate that answer. I wanted to learn a little bit if I could, and we look at these every month. I thought, we have a kind of a short agenda tonight. This might be the time to kind of try to ask that question, and I should know that. So thank you. I'm very glad to hear that staff audited and caught that, and it went to the benefit of the city. I have to admit, that's if they owed that amount, we caught it and they paid. That's good. My other question is, overall, how do we feel? So you're the finance professionals. How do we feel about the way these numbers are shaping up? I know COVID, everything's really up in the air. We may get like a third wave, and then who knows? But overall, do we feel good, or how does staff feel about the numbers you're presenting? They didn't look as bad as I kind of anticipated, but I know there are a lot of businesses that are hurting. And what would you say about the numbers overall? Are they?
Thank you, Councilor Bowles. I'll try to address that question. It's very early in the year. Obviously, this is our February financial report, so just a couple of months of data. And of course, the sales tax returns are received in arrears. They come in about a month after the economic activity. So we just have the 1 month of sales tax activity to receive. I would say the takeaway for the council and for the community is that at this early stage, we are generally speaking on budget for revenues and expenditures. And so no new policy decisions to be made, no change of course at this time, sort of steady as we go, albeit with this great financial challenge that we have in public health crisis of COVID-19. So again, no major decisions to be made and generally on course. We would always let you know and the public if there were either some tremendous positive or negative change. And of course, council will be undertaking a much closer look at the finances and our projections next quarter when we have a little bit more data in hand and somewhat in advance of our budget process. So stay tuned for more. Also, our finance department will be preparing its quarterly COVID Chronicle, in which we provide much more detail here at the end of the quarter here at the end of this month. So stay tuned for more, but I would just tell you in a nutshell, generally on course for our budget and no major changes necessary at this point. Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you for that answer. And then one other quick thing. When we get into the budget process or leading up to that, 68 to 70% of our budget is sales tax. If these numbers begin going in a wrong direction, let's say, do we have what would be the plans in place to maybe diversify or to backfill? So I don't want that answer tonight, but maybe when we're doing the budget, is that possible? Because I feel like 68 to 70% is pretty high percentage, obviously, of our revenue for the city come from sales tax. If they begin going the wrong way, what plans do we have in place to do something about that, if possible? So I don't need that answer tonight, but can we maybe have some around when we begin looking at these numbers again for the budget?
Oh, yes, we will do that. We have done that historically, and we'll continue to provide information on sectors and other segments of the city's revenue that make up that other 30 to 40%. So we'll do.
Okay, good. Thank you, guys. Appreciate it. I just had those quick questions, and thank you very much, and good answers. Thank you.
Councilor Scully, you had a question?
No, sir, I had put in to second the motion. Sorry.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions from council? All right, seeing none, we have a motion and a second to accept the consent agenda item 8A. Ms. Parker, this is a roll call vote, please.
Mayor Atchison,
Yes.
Councilor Demott,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Sights,
Yes.
Councilor Seymour,
Yes.
Councilor Scully,
Yes.
thank you,
Sorry.
Councilor Smith,
Yes.
and Councilor Bowles.
Yes.
All right, thank you, council. The motion passes on a 7-0 vote. Moving to item 9 on the agenda, appointments and resignations. We have none tonight. I will tell you that we have had one being advertised. This is our community corrections vacancy on Jefferson County. My last contact with the city clerk's office is we still do not have anybody who has applied for that position from Jefferson County. So if anyone comes across a viable or likely candidate, we are still in need of doing that. I have talked to Mr. DeLong. He's willing to hang on for another month or so, but after that, he's going to take his leave of absence. Councilor Demott, you had a question? Or not? Nope, never mind. Okay, thank you. All right, moving on to item 10A. This is a Councilor's Bill number 7, and Councilor Scully, if you will.
Thank you, Miss. Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move to pass Councilor's Bill number 7 on first reading, providing for a supplemental appropriation of funds to the 2020 budget of the General Utility Enterprise, Golf Course Enterprise, Fleet Maintenance, General Capital Outlay Replacement, Sale and Use Tax, Parks, Open Space and Trails, General Capital Improvement, and Community Development Block Grant Funds.
I have a motion. I have a second. Mr. Demott?
Second.
Thank you. I have a motion and a second for item 10A, Council's Bill number 7. Are there any questions or comments from council? Seeing none, Ms. Parker, this is item Council's Bill number 7. So roll call vote, please.
Councilor Demott,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Sights,
Yes.
Councilor Seymour,
Yes.
Councilor Scully,
Yes.
Councilor Smith,
Yes.
Councilor Bowles,
Yes.
and Mayor Atchison.
Yes. Thank you. Council passes on a 7-0 vote. Moving on to item 10B. This is resolution number 4. Councilor Scully.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move to adopt resolution number 4, approving the redesignation of 690 acres of parkland to open space.
Councilor Bowles.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Is there any questions by or comments by council? Councilor Smith, you have a question.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just for definition purposes, defining open space versus parkland and the uses of it.
Mr. Tripp.
You know, generally speaking, Councilor Smith, parkland is land that you see that has some development on it. It could be as simple as irrigated grasses and non-native plant species, playgrounds, tennis courts, ball fields, and that sort of thing. Open space in our city and in most of the other communities that have such an ordinance is unimproved land, and it's land that we've acquired to protect for its environmental and natural beauty, environmental qualities and natural beauty. And so You see this a lot throughout our city where parkland will abut open space. And that's really the differentiation. If you want more detail than that, I'll be glad to bring Rod Larson on to give you more information.
No, I think that's good. And my question kind of really pertains around the section, the most western section in that 681 acres. There's a portion of Stanley Lake in there. And so my question would be, if this is in open space, then it would then negate all recreational use if in the future it could be recreational use such as boating or paddle boards. I'm assuming, how do we, so the two questions, with our current use of paddle boards on the lake, I would assume that this would be a cutoff point for paddle boards using that area. And two, if we turn this portion of the lake into open space and not parkland anymore, does that negate for future use for any kind of boating or paddleboard use in the future?
Thank you for the question. I'm going to ask Rod Larson to come on. They can talk about the uses of the lake and how this interfaces with that. Rod, Rod, please, or Joe Real, whoever you choose, Rod.
I'm not sure if Rod's still here, but I'm glad to answer that question. The basic difference between parkland use and open space use is what's termed as passive recreation. And so paddle boards are considered passive recreation. They would be allowed in that area. The dividing line in this land transfer that you're looking at lines up exactly with what was previously and always has been a passive recreational use area. So this has no impact on boating in the future if some things should change.
Got it. Thank you. And then my last and final question is why now? How come we decided now and not earlier, not later? How come now?
Hi, Councilor Smith. It's Jason Gank, Director of Parks, Recreation, and Libraries. It's good to see Mayor Pro Tem, and all council. Sorry, I had a technical difficulty there in getting on camera, so I do apologize for that. The question I believe you asked was why now? Why would we go and request this redesignation of open space, a parkland open space? And that's a good question. We've been managing these areas of the Stanley Lake Park area as open space since the inception of having these areas within city land, city ownership, that is. The reality is frankly, this should have been done a long time ago. We informally reference these areas as open space simply because we manage and operate them consistent with open space standards. We just never took the step in our entire history, to formally recognize this area as open space. So we had wanted to utilize the process of the Stanley Lake Master Plan to just have this as one of several actions for council's consideration, but for a variety of reasons, the Stanley Lake Master Plan was delayed. So we wanted to come back to council for this formal action at this point in time. This action, in staff's recommendation, is really long overdue, as what we're asking is consistent with how it's operated and managed.
Okay, thank you. That's all my questions.
Councilor Scully.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I don't have any questions. I just wanted to compliment the city. I think this is an excellent use of land. I love that it protects this piece of land more so as open space rather than when it was parkland. So I think this is an excellent use of this space, and I appreciate them bringing this forward. Thank you.
Councilor Demott.
Excuse me. Thank you, Mayor. I'm just curious. So I see that in the agenda memo, it shows no fiscal impact. So is that upfront or ongoing, all in general? Like, I'm just curious if like that changes how we maintain it in the budget. Does that change any any dollars, as well as it sounds like it doesn't change use too much. It's just, I'm trying to understand that piece of it, like what uses it doesn't change or doesn't it change, and does that change your budget needs to take care of it?
Thank you, Councilor Demott, for that question and opportunity to clarify. No, staff is not reporting any fiscal impact, mostly really because we've been managing it in those same standards all along. Since we've actually owned those properties, we've been managing them as open space. So we will continue to manage them as open space, even with this redesignation as open space.
Okay, great. Thank you very much.
Any other questions or comments from council on this item? Seeing none, Ms. Parker, this is resolution number 4. So roll call vote, please.
Mayor Pro Tem Sights.
Yes.
Counselor Seymour.
Yes.
Counselor Scully.
Yes.
Counselor Smith.
Yes.
Counselor Bowles.
Yes.
Mayor Atchison.
Yes.
And Counselor Demott.
Yes.
Okay, thank you, council. The motion passes on a 7-0 vote. Our next item on the agenda is supposed to be the COVID-19 updates, but I will ask you to forgive me. I got so overtaken by learning that I had a son that I forgot to mention 2 very important items earlier. That the Sweet Bloom restaurant, which many of you have already seen pictures of, opened officially this past Saturday. And at the time I was there, the place was packed. So thank you and welcome to the new business. Also opening up on Wednesday of this week is the Family restaurant on the main floor of the new Origin Hotel. This is a French style restaurant. I was very impressed. I was there as part of the soft opening, and they have an excellent menu and an opportunity to meet more of your neighbors and stuff. Also, the Origin Hotel will officially be opening on March the 31st, and the 2nd and the 3rd through the 4th nights of their first week of opening has a large number of guests already booked in. So already we are seeing people start to line up to partake of this. And if you are a family traveling, this hotel has a family suite that I've never seen anywhere. It has a large king size bed for mom and dad. And then the other sleeping area has 2 sets of bunk beds for the kids, all in one suite area. And I don't want to quote the rack rate because I don't remember 100% I got it right, but it's extremely inexpensive compared to some of our neighbors. So I apologize for having to go back. Mr. Tripp, we have a COVID update, I believe.
Max, please go ahead.
I was going to say, I'm going to assume that was my silent introduction. So this evening, similar slides as you've seen before, and a little bit of good news, bad news, maybe. Good news or cautious news. You'll see here that the overall color changes on the dial have not changed. They remain as they were, overall yellow and blue respectively for Adams and Jefferson. The good news, bad news part is, while it looks like case numbers have increased across the board per 100,000 over that 7-day period, the better news to that then is checking at the end of the day today, I see that the Adams County and the Jefferson County numbers are back down to around just a little bit over the 100 mark. So they've been holding fairly steady in that range. Could be a lot of things that maybe caused that spike upward, but it looks like it, as of today, coming back down a little bit. Percent positivity, both on Friday, as this data shows, as well as today, seems to be a little bit higher now, more in that mid 4s to 6% positivity rate. As I compare that to there is a set of slides that show number of tests conducted in the state. As we've talked about before, you can still see that number of tests on a daily basis has continued to decline over time. So I'm sure that is at least a factor in that percent positivity rate. Numbers currently hospitalized, still up from the low point that it hit at about 325 here on Friday, showing as 370. Today, that number is pretty steady still. It's at 365. I'll go to the next slide. Here you'll see a little bit more about the trend of that hospitalization number for the first time in quite a while. You begin to see what looks like it's either leveled off or increasing a little bit. That's something to continue to pay attention to with virus variants, but not alarming at 365. The last comment I'd like to make is the state was accepting comments through today on an update to the dial system to be called Dial 3.0, which could be published as early as the middle of this week. The changes, there are a handful of changes that are very specific. I'll try to just generalize them by saying in the Dial 3.0, I think you'll see some changes to the range of each of the colors on the dial. For example, the threshold between yellow and blue being the better, has changed a little bit, making it a little bit easier for counties to get to that blue stage down from the yellow stage. You'll also see some changes in capacities related to outdoor events. That should be favorable to the outdoor event. And you'll see some things like capacity limit changes for some indoor functions, including business, retail business and restaurant type information. I'd like to keep it kind of general at that level. That's as we've seen it for comment. And some comments may lead to some changes to the draft as it was proposed, but should be made public by later this week is the way I understand it. That's all I have for presentation this evening, unless you have any questions.
Max, I do have a question coming up this second. I'm going to respond to your comments on the survey from the state. We did meet with the state this past week in regard to the pending 3.0 changes. And even though they have changed the capacity numbers for our restaurants, my question to them was, if you're not going to change the spacing requirement, you're not doing anything to add to people being able to put more butts in seats in restaurants just because you say they can have a larger capacity. The feedback I received at the meeting was that CDC has not taken a position on the changing of the spacing on anything but schools, and therefore the state did not consider changing the 6-foot rule on tables, but they would continue to review it as part of the comment process. So the best understanding I have is today is that rule is probably not going to change. So even though numbers have changed on the dial and in some capacity on events, they will not be changing the restaurant capacity by lowering the distance in there, which consequently means they can't put any more people in the restaurant than they're already doing. But to your point, we received word this afternoon, we are looking at the 3.0 to come out on Wednesday and take effect on Thursday. And then they also talked about the mass vaccine sites that we had planned that Dick's Sporting Good Field was scheduled to open on Wednesday, but the governor and the county actually opened it today. So that one is there. And a reminder that March 25th Waterworld will cease doing COVID testing because they're going to start to prepare the site for reopening for this season. But we still do have the Mako site at Fat Cats, still has a large amount of capacity there. And we are seeing potential applications going in for more vaccine sites being in the north end of the metro area, but we don't have any of them that have been approved yet. Mayor Pro Tem, you had a comment.
It was actually a quick question. I found out kind of from my other colleagues who are local electeds getting their vaccines on Friday that for the continuity of local government, elected leaders are considered in that tranche. And I just wanted to make sure that was our staff's interpretation of the new rule as well. And then wanted to highlight for my colleagues that if that is in fact accurate for those of us who are not 50, that's an option for us. Can anyone clarify if I'm getting good information that we as elected leaders qualify now?
It seemed clear to me in the definition of 1B4 that it would include local elected officials.
Okay. I figured we were part-time. I wasn't sure if it counted for continuity. So good news for all of us on council, because I believe that makes all of us eligible. I'm glad for our employees, because I would imagine if it's for us, is that then for all local government employees, Max, as well?
City manager has taken a similar view in interpretation of that same guidance that in fact city employees would qualify under that same item within 1B4.
Wonderful. That makes me happy for our librarians, for those who work in our public, all public facing spaces, and just those who are making sure that the city is still operating. So I did want to highlight that. Thank you.
Councilor Scully.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I appreciate Mayor Pro Tem's question. I think that I love that we are opening this up to many people being able to get it, but I am eligible and have not been able to find a location. So I was actually going to ask you, Mr. Mayor, do we have anything that might be coming toward Westminster? And I know you said that we've put in some applications, but do we have any indication that we might be getting something here in Westminster for our residents?
At this time, we don't have any provider that has sought approval for a new vaccine site. So the best thing I can tell you at this point, if you are eligible and you have not signed up, centura.org/vaccine. Again, centura.org/vaccine allows you to sign up for vaccines at Dick's Sporting Goods. If you go to Health One and look at their website, which is North Suburban Hospital, they are also now vaccinating 1B4. You have two different, I believe one of the two, and I'm not sure which one it is. One's doing Pfizer and one's doing Moderna, but I'm not sure which one's which. But that's at least two locations.
I'm sorry. Also have a reliable source telling me that City of Thornton has a significant availability for sign up as well.
And that's the fire district that's doing that, Max?
Yes, sir, that's correct.
Okay, yeah, that's the one that's being done by Health One.
There is one other opportunity within the city that is taking shape. Staff within Parks, Rec, and Library, as well as Fire Department, have been working in tandem with Maker Housing and other partners to establish essentially an equity clinic in the 71st and Federal housing complex. And that would be operating, I believe it is 2 days per week with a limited number of doses available, but the design of that is toward those who live in that complex or in that vicinity.
Understood. Can we put some of this information on our website so that people have easy access to it?
Yes, I can make sure that it's updated on the website.
Thank you very much. That's all for me. Thank you.
Just a reminder on the Dick's Sporting Goods is only 3 days a week. So I understand right now, it's not 7 days a week, but I'll have Max verify that before we put it on the website. Any other comments or questions? Okay, let's move on. Mr. Kirschbaum, thank you. We have anything else on
Yes.
COVID? I thought we had a presentation yet. Don, you're muted. Okay. Sorry, I missed it. We were foregoing that presentation. Thank you for the reminder. All right, moving on then that concludes all the business then for us on the agenda for the city council. At this point, we will adjourn the city council meeting and we'll reconvene now under the Westminster Economic Development Authority Board of Directors. I will forego the roll call as we have already taken that under the city council and move on to the next item, which is the approval of the minutes of the February 8th meeting. Councilor Demott. Sorry, board member Demott.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move to approve the minutes of the February 8th, 2021 meeting as presented.
Board member Smith.
Second.
You have a motion and a second. All those in favor of the motion, please signify by aye.
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 Any opposed? Hearing none, the minutes are approved as presented. Next item on the agenda is a public hearing on the resolution 212 authorizing supplemental appropriations and a revised appropriation of the 2020 Westminster Economic Development Authority budget. Ms. Parker, just for the record, do we have anybody, since you sent out this material, that has asked to speak?
No, sir. For the public hearing this evening, no person requested to speak live by the deadline, nor were any voicemails or emails received regarding this item.
All right. However, for the record, so that the hearing can be officially opened, it's approximately 8:21. I'll go ahead and open up the hearing to the public. As reported by the city clerk's office, we did not receive any requests to speak live. We have no voicemails received by the deadline, and we've had no emails regarding this issue. Since there are none requested, then I will go ahead and close the public hearing and move on to item A2, resolution number 212. And that will be board member Scully.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move to adopt resolution number 212, authorizing a supplemental appropriation and a revised appropriation to the 2020 Westminster Economic Development Authority budget.
All right, board member Voles.
I second the motion.
All right, I have a motion and a second for the adoption of resolution number 212. Are there any comments or questions by any member of the board? All right, seeing none, Ms. Parker, this is a roll call vote, please.
Chairperson Atchison,
Yes.
Board Member Demott,
Yes.
Vice Chairperson Seitz,
Yes.
Board Member Seymour,
Yes.
Board Member Scully,
Yes.
Board Member Smith,
Yes.
and Board Member Voles.
Yes.
All right. Thank you, members of the board. At this time, this concludes the business of the Westminster Economic Development Authority Board, and therefore we are adjourned. And we'll come back to the Westminster City Council. We have a request for an executive session for tonight. And let's see, Mr. Frankel is out. Ms. Decker, I think you're up.
Yes, Ms. Decker, please.
Yes, Kristen, your voice is muted. You're still muted. Ms. Parker, let's see if we can help Ms. Decker get online, please.
Yeah, Ms. Decker, I can see that you are unmuted and I'm showing that you're remuted again. Your camera seems to be operational, but Mr. Mayor, as an alternative, if one of the members of council would like to move to make a motion to move into the executive session using the title on your motion spreadsheet, along with a second, that would suffice as well.
All right.
Ms. Decker cannot get back online.
Yeah, bigger than that, I need to get her own voice for the meeting.
Yeah.
So let's see if we can get her fixed first, and then if that doesn't work, we'll go to council.
Mr. Mayor, I might suggest that she calls in audio on her phone, right?
Well, she's
If
working.
we're-
Just hang on a minute. She's working and I'm watching her. All right, Ms. Decker, we're going to move on. Why don't you try just logging out and logging back in, and we'll hopefully see you on the other, at the other location. All right. Mayor Pro Tem Sites, would you like to make the motion?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I move that we go into an executive session for consultation with the city attorney and special water counsel regarding pending litigation in water court case 18 CW 3090, and for the purposes of receiving legal advice thereon, pursuant to Westminster Municipal Code 1-11-3, Section C3, and CRS 24-6-402, Section 4B and E and I.
Councilor Vols.
Second the motion.
I have a motion and a second to go into executive session as defined by the motion that was made by council. This time I'll ask each member to confirm verbally that they are prepared to go into executive session. Also, as a reminder, once we have said will and taken the vote, we will go into executive session and you will go to a new location. And remember, you will be password protected and we will log out. For the public, once this vote is taken, we will leave this session and we will not be back in public session. So this will be the end of our event for tonight. This time I will ask each member to confirm they're prepared to go. Mayor Pro Tem Sites.
Yes.
Councilor Scully.
Yes, sir.
Councilor Demott.
Yes.
Councilor Vols.
Yes.
Councilor Smith.
Yes.
Councilor Seymour.
Yes.
And the mayor as well. We are in executive session at 8:28. Ladies and gentlemen, we will take a short brief. We will be back in 8:35. We will reconvene 8:35. They'll give you a chance to take a quick break. Good night,
Thank you,
everyone.
Mr. Mayor.